Welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at creating our pickup objects. So we just finished putting in the walls, and now we got to have something so the player can pick it up. What we're going to do is just make a cube, place it in the scene, and then put some script on it to make it look a little bit more attractive here. So I'm going to come down here, create 3D object, cube, and then if it makes it over here like I did on mine, just set it back to the reset position, and it should be where the ball is. Now the ball is a little bit in the way there, so remember, or player I guess I really should say, you can hide that by just making it set active to false, just turning it off here in the top right in the inspector, and it just disappears, but it's still in the game. We just have to bring it back. So we've got this one here called cube, and so what I'm going to do is we'll call it pickup. And we're going to place it just above the ground again. So I'm going to move it up on the y-axis, just half a unit. And we don't want it as big as the player, so I'm going to reduce the scale to a half on each one. Okay, so if I sort of come down, I'm just going to focus in on it. So remember, you can just press F and the camera focuses in. A little bit down, just let me move this down. Okay. Oops, too far. Why can't I get this to be better? Okay, so he's, as you can see there, he's just sort of flying a little bit above the ground, which is fine. To get it to rotate, what we're going to do is put a script on it. So we're going to come over into here, add component, okay? And just like we did before, we will add a new script, and this one we will call rotator. Okay. And create an add. And once that's open, let's open up that script. So I'm going to edit the script. Somewhere here, come on. There we go. And so I'm just going to go edit script. And the script here is going to be very, very simple. We're just going to come into the update. And basically we're just going to do a transform.rotate and new vector 3. So back to our vector 3, let me just make this bigger here, because we're going to rotate it around the 3 axes. And you can play around with these numbers, but 15, 30, and 45 get you nice round numbers there, and they will rotate it nicely sort of on its edge. And then we're going to multiply this by time.delta time. Don't worry too much about this at the moment. What it is just multiplying it by regular time. Delta means change in time, so it's basically the regular change in time. Computers can run at different speeds, and you've seen things when they get laggy and stuff like that. This just maintains that it's always going to be running according to the computer's time, and especially important in the update, because the update can vary. In fact, we have to go back to our player controller and fix something, and we'll do that a little bit later, but it has to do with this idea of time maybe going too fast or too slow, and we're going to fix that up too. But anyways, let's just concentrate on that. So this is just our script here. I'm going to save it up. Before I run this and make sure that it's working fine, I'm just going to check one thing. I need to get it off on a bit of an angle. So what I'm going to do here is set all of these to 45 degrees. And it just basically puts this on an angle. Now if I hit play, and if I've done everything correctly, it should just sort of rotate around. There we go. Okay, and you can play around with those different numbers and see what happens, but you just get this rotating cube here. It'll just attract the attention of the player. Now, we should probably change the color of it here. We don't want this drab gray. So remember, in our materials, we had a ground and a player materials. Well, let's create another new material. So I'm going to create a material. Maybe I should call it pickup. And I'm going to make it yellow. But again, I don't really care what color you make it. You can make it any color you want. But that should attract the attention. And remember, all we have to do is drag it on, and now you've got a nice yellow rotator. Now, we want to make a few more than just one here. Now, we could duplicate it, but we're going to do something a little bit different this time, and we're actually going to create something called a prefab. Prefab stands for prefabricated. So this is a prefabricated object. Portables are sometimes called prefabs because they're built off-site and then brought in, right? So they're prefabricated. They're made before they're sort of brought there. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this pickup and we're just going to drag it. I'm just going to drag it into the assets folder. We'll deal with it in a second. And I'll just show you what happens. So just drag it into your assets folder. So it's happy to go in there. And what happens is here, it becomes a prefab. So we've kind of made an object that now we can just drag in. And so basically, if you want, you can just keep dragging these in. I'll show you what sort of advantage of it in a minute here. So what I'm going to do is I can just, now that it's a prefab, just, whoops, Shift D, Control D, sorry, Control D. I'm just going to make a bunch of them here. Okay, whoops, I didn't want to bring it up. We want to keep them all on the same level, basically. You can arrange them more creatively than me. I'm just throwing some in here. As long as you bring a few in. Okay, that's the important thing. So, do I have a few extra there? I think I made a few extras, so just a second. More than just a few. So, just take a few, move them around. How many did I build here? Oh. Okay, I think that was the last one. Okay, perfect. I've got lots just sitting here. If I hit play now, they all sort of rotate. Okay, so I've got them all rotating nicely. I'll bring my player back. Maybe I'll move that one that was 0, 0. Was this guy 0, 0? One of these was. Well, I'll see where my player was. Player, bring him back. Okay, so there he was. And so the one that was there, let me just hide that. Okay, that's this guy. Okay, so I'll just, whoops, I moved the player. Okay, now I got the pickup. I'll just move that away. Okay, perfect. Now, down here, you can see that probably some organization would be good. So, I did the walls. Same idea here. I'm going to create an empty. Make sure you reset that position. Name it, I guess, pickups. And I'm just going to put all my pickups inside there. So that's one here. I'm just going to hold Shift down and click. And that way I've got them all there. Drag that group into the pickups. And now I can just close that up. All right, so all your pickups are in that folder. What makes it nice too is if I wanted to get rid of all my pickups, I can just get rid of the parent and then all of them are there. Except for this one. He got away. Put him in. Whoops. There he goes. All right. Perfect. Now, if I play this game at the moment, what's going to basically happen is that I'm just going to run into them. Okay. So I'm going to hit them. They're just like objects. Okay. I can just bounce into them. They won't react like sort of with physics, like they won't move their position, and that's simply because we don't have a rigid body on them. So they're just rotating and they have a collider, but they don't really act like a real object. I mean, and that makes sense because they would otherwise be falling unless they had some sort of anti-gravity property on them. So it works perfectly fine for our purposes, but now we have to deal with it getting picked up. So we're going to do that in the next video. But like I said, I'm going to do one minor change here because I kind of forgot about it. So let's go back to, well, let's clean this up first here. I'm going to put my rotator script in my scripts folder. And just to be consistent here too, I'm going to create a new folder. In a second. And I'm going to call this one prefabs. And I'm going to put my pickup into my prefab as well. Perfect. Okay, so there's no files that are sort of outside of folders here. Good, nice and organized. Okay, like I said, I'm going to make sure in my scripts, I want to make one update to the player controller. So double click on your player controller or open it however you need to. And I'm just going to go to my script. And what I forgot to do, I guess in my excitement of making this video, was that if anytime you're using like the rigid body, so if you're adding force in this case, or doing anything with the rigid body, it's generally a good idea to change update into fixed update. So that's F-I-X-E-D, fixed update. And the idea with fixed update is that it runs at about 20 frames per second. Typically, your regular update could run up to 60 frames per second, and this sort of fixes at 20 frames per second. The question is, well, why is that important? Well, why that's important is certain things to do with the physics engine always and only check at like every 20 frames per second. So if you have any of these physics in the regular update rather than the fixed update, what can happen is that, for example, you're pushing against the wall and your ball will go through the wall. So it's very important that you change this from update to fixed update. Okay, so just make sure you save that. And like I said, we're going to come back to this in a little bit here in the next video so that we can deal with when the ball runs into the pickup, we can actually pick it up.